The Olympic Games is probably the most epic and expensive event on our planet. Dozens of venues should be prepared in a host country to organize the games properly. However, the Olympics is also a triumph of inefficiency and wastefulness, as lots of facilities stay untouched and abandoned when the celebration ends. Greece, Brazil, China or Russia invested huge amounts of money to prepare for the games, but in many cases, we now only see the barren landscapes and empty stadiums that are not in use. There are only a few positive examples of repurposing the Olympic areas after the event. One of them is London, where all the venues are now actively exploited and the Olympic Villages area got a good boost, becoming an attractive and constantly developing place so far. The International Olympic Committee and hosting countries are often criticized and ashamed for these inefficiencies, so the officials had to reconsider their approach to hosting bids, from lavish blow-off to frugal modesty. There were some attempts of making games more conscious and responsible. For example, in Tokyo, the Olympic medals were made of alloy, included metal scraps from old smartphones. But of course, it was just a tiny effort. The things changed in 2021 when the International Olympic Committee introduced new rules of choosing a host city. Since that, the city has to be well prepared already at the application stage, having appropriate facilities for Olympic sports to not cause wasting resources and increase the environmental pressure as a result. This is how the committee approved the single bid of Brisbane for the 2032 Summer Olympics. The Paris Olympics are already the hottest games ever, as athletes have to compete under 34 degrees Celsius outside due to changing climate. But the greatest problem is with Winter Olympics, as rising temperatures will likely leave no more than 10 sufficient places in the entire world to host the games by 2040. Therefore, the current games in Paris, which is claimed to be the most sustainable ever, according to the organizers' ambitions, is not a show-off, it's a necessity. The 2024 Olympics is to be a game changer in a sense of climate and sustainability in general. The carbon footprint of the games is big enough, around 3.5 million tons of CO2 equivalent in average. French organizers pledged to cut the game's emissions by half compared to previous ones. It's not yet known if they do it, but there are some important things supporting this claim. First of all, Paris didn't have to build multiple facilities for these games, as most of them already existed in the city. This approach has already reduced the concrete and steel usage and emissions consequently. The only building which is completely new is the aquatic center, made of cross-laminated timber or CLT. This material was used for construction of the highest wooden building in the world in Norway. And this is the response to concrete and steel-hungry venues, like the Bird's Nest in Beijing, for example, which is getting rust and under-maintained due to its uselessness. A big contrast, as the Nest was perceived a real miracle back in 2008. Besides, the aquatic center is equipped with rooftop solar panels, which give 20% of the building's electricity. This is one of the biggest urban solar plants in France. Unlike previous iterations, the 2024 Olympics widely used recycled materials, firstly plastic, to produce seats in the arenas, and excessive seats will be recycled again when the event ends. Same is relevant for another plastic stuff like metal pedestals. After London, where the city officials put effort to revitalize former industrial area into human-friendly landscape, Paris decided to do the same with the poorest French commune, Saint-Denis. Exampled by the British capital, a depressive area got the place of the Olympic Village. The village is built in the way avoiding the air conditioning system's usage, streaming water in houses to cool them in summertime. When the games end, 1/3 of living capacities will be converted into social housing, and the rest is to be sold for the middle and upper classes, for social diversity. The developers even repurposed scaffoldings in the village by making city lights of them. Looks curiously, but it's rather a parody on sustainability than the real deal. The most ambitious plan of Paris for these games was the cleanup of the Seine River, unsuitable for swimming for more than 100 years. City management spent around 1.6 billion euros and 10 years for this endeavor, improving the sewage system and aeration facilities. The video of the Paris mayor swimming in the river claimed to be a great PR example. However, the desired purity of Seine wasn't achieved. The water still has excessive concentrations of Escherichia coli. In addition, the games still haven't solved the greatest problem. The event attracts more than 10,000 athletes along with around the same number of delegations members and hundreds of thousands of tourists from all over the world. Most of them get there by planes, increasing carbon emissions and overall environmental pressure on a single geographical point by increased water consumption, wasting and sewage. Emissions is the greatest problem here, considering that humankind is out of track in achieving the climate goals, and aviation is a great contributor, especially when it comes to international long-time flights. This problem has no quick solution, and it doesn't fully depend on IOC for sure. Therefore, the IOC would be very useful to collaborate with ICAO and the biggest airlines to reduce the aviation emissions. That would be win-win tactics. The IOC itself made some noticeable steps to make the games greener by developing ESG recommendations for the host nations of the future Olympics. Besides, the committee participates in green initiatives, such as the Great Green Wall in Africa, where they claim to plant more than 500,000 trees in Sahel areas. These all are good initiatives, and we are the witnesses of how the Olympic movement is getting more responsible. But yet there are still a lot to improve to achieve zero environmental pressure. Especially it concerns the heritage of the previous games, namely the abandoned and decomposing venues, scarring the landscapes and the environment. They have to be recycled or managed properly, and this should be the responsibility of the IOC as the overseer of the games. Programs on revival or recultivation of unclaimed Olympic facilities should definitely be in the center of attention of the IOC officials. Their view is undoubtedly focused on future, but the environmental burden of the former Olympics is the dark side of the sports celebration, and that should never be forgotten. Thank you for watching this video. Good luck and be sustainable.